I gotta say, right now, out of the big three, Jujutsu Kaisen is exciting me the most. So the fight between Yuji and Okkotsu is continuing, and we see like Okkotsu slashing at him, and Yuji's like barely able to avoid it at this point. Even his cheeks like getting nicked, and he's like, I need to do something about that katana. As long as I can steal my body with cursed energy, I don't fear blades. But if I think that way about this human opponent, they'll make mincemeat out of me in no time. And while Yuji's saying this, he's remembering like his fight with Awasaka, and basically like saying that like, okay, I could have done this with somebody on the level of Awasaka, but Okkotsu, no, he'll just straight up, cut me in half. So then Yuji like runs over to a bunch of cars and he spots like a Hummer, and he like dips inside of it real quick and then dips out. But while he was in there, he conveniently spotted a survival knife on the seat and grabs it in an attempt to defend himself against Okkotsu's katana. And yes, he's a little successful with this thing, and the reason it's not immediately breaking is of course because he's imbuing it with his own cursed energy. And Okkotsu says if it isn't a special cursed tool, I don't need to fear it, which is clearly true. And then we get a flashback of Gojo speaking, and he's like, depending on the type, I recommend training with a focus on weapons, but it's no good to rely on cursed tools to the point of neglecting cursed energy control. So you're not ready for something like this yet, Yuji. And he holds up like this knife, which is apparently Slaughter Demon, and it's for an emergency. Meaning that like if you're straight up just given this super powerful weapon right off the bat, you're going to be spoiled, and you're going to, like you said, neglect, cursed energy control, meaning that Yuji wouldn't be able to improvise with this survival knife like he is here. So then Yuji gets into another clash with Okkotsu, but then Okkotsu's like, you're too focused on my katana, and just gives him like a front kick. And Yuji's like, even a mere forward kick from him is incredibly powerful. Going back to the previous chapter, and was like, Okkotsu inherently is physically not that strong, but when he reinforces his body with his crazy cursed energy, he gains like special grade strength. Then Okkotsu slashes down and just breaks right through the survival knife, and then also cuts Yuji in the process. But as his sword comes down, Yuji like notices it, and then he steps on it, and then surprisingly just straight snaps it. And Okkotsu's like, he broke it. Well, of course, he is Gojo Sensei's pupil. This was never going to be easy. Then Yuji starts to go back after Okkotsu, and he's like, my wound is deep, but my guts are still intact, and now we're both unarmed. But then out of nowhere, this big hand comes from behind Yuji and grabs him, and what did you know, it's Rika. And she's like, what's going on here? And Okkotsu says, we're just playing, Rika. And Yuji's like, Rika, is this a Shikigami? Where did it come from? And then we see Okkotsu holding the broken katana, and he's like, hold him for me. So let's break this down, because this is a huge moment right here. So what is exactly happening with Rika here? So obviously it hasn't been explained, so we're gonna have to guess a little bit right now. But if you'll notice, this doesn't look exactly identical to the Rika that we were introduced to in Volume 0. Similar, yes, but not exactly the same. Which makes me think that maybe this isn't exactly the same one-for-one Rika from Volume 0, like the cursed spirit of the little girl Rika. This could be like a new Rika entity, cursed spirit altogether. And I think the katana might explain this, because back in Volume 0, Gojo tells Okkotsu to like focus as much of the cursed energy just from Rika in general into his katana, because Gojo says that like cursed spirits are easily controlled once they're imbued inside of an object. And Okkotsu clearly was doing that in Volume 0, but that sequence wasn't really expanded too much after that was said. So I'm guessing that by Okkotsu doing that, he created like a new version of Rika that is just within the katana itself. Therefore, I think it's not a coincidence that she just comes out once Yuji snapped the katana, and we see Okkotsu holding it in this sequence, which I think is probably drawing attention to it for that reason. Again, no official explanation for this yet. We're just taking guesses, but I think this might be why, or just something close to that at least. But anyway, going back to when he says, hold him for me, Okkotsu just stabs Yuji in the heart with the broken katana. And he says, sorry, Itadori. So Okkotsu saying like, sorry, Itadori, makes me think that like, he definitely knows what's going on here. It was kind of portrayed like in chapter 137 that like Okkotsu was like cold-bloodedly going after Yuji. He didn't really care what the situation was with him, but this is making me think that he kind of is aware of what's going on here. Like, he knows that Yuji is not like a bad person inherently. He knows that he's the vessel of Sukuna. And obviously there were major parallels set up between Okkotsu and Yuji in Volume 0. They both have extremely similar origins with Gojo. And of course, the comparison between the Queen of Curses Rika and the King of Curses Sukuna, them both being, you know, vessels more or less. Okkotsu, not necessarily a vessel, but it's kind of like in the same ballpark. So I wouldn't be surprised if Okkotsu definitely relates to Yuji here and is totally aware of what's going on, but it basically boils down to like, hey, it's just business, you know? But that brings us to the next part here, because after he says that, then we see Sukuna inside of Yuji and he's like, "Tch," and then he starts to smile. So I know we've been guessing a lot in this chapter so far, but we're gonna have to continue to guess here. So what does this mean? Well, it can mean a few things. Either Okkotsu is deliberately trying to draw Sukuna out of Yuji because he's trying to exercise him, going back to what I was saying about how Okkotsu is aware of what's going on here. And I would like to think that he knows that it's not like literally Yuji that took Inumaki's arm off, but it was in fact Sukuna that did it. So he's drawing Sukuna out because he wants to exercise Sukuna. And this is like a good way to do it. And maybe Sukuna is catching on to that. He's like, oh, you want me to come out? You want to play? All right. And then that means the next chapter we would get Okkotsu versus Sukuna, which is just mind melting. But I don't want to get my hopes up too much. There's a chance it could happen. But I'll also say that the other thing that could be happening here with Sukuna smiling is that maybe it's at this point that Fushiguro has shown up. Because we know that he was looking for Yuji as well in Shibuya, but just Naoya and Okkotsu had happened to show up before him. So maybe now that Fushiguro has showed up, Sukuna's like, yeah, my boy is here. And then maybe we'll get a little more insight into what Sukuna has planned for him. I'm hoping that it's the former here, although I wouldn't be mad at the latter either. But anyway, we're coming back to Choso versus Naoya, and it's straight up revealed here that Naoya does in fact have projection sorcery, the curse technique that we saw Naobito using. I speculated that this was a possibility a couple chapters back when Choso was talking about how there was a trick to Naoya's speed. And it makes sense that Naoya would have projection sorcery considering he is the son of Naobito. Although at that time he didn't use it immediately, or at least we the audience didn't see him using it, so there was a chance that maybe he didn't have it and that he just had some kind of other technique possibly. But no, he just has projection sorcery here, and that's fine. I like that this technique is living on considering Naobito is now dead, and he had one of the more interesting and I'll say nuanced cursed techniques in the series. But then he like levels Choso, and Choso's like, I have no idea what kind of cursed technique he's using, and he's overwhelming me, so I don't think he'll choose to disclose it. Forget about convergence, I can't even control the blood outside my body. And then Naoya's like, you're tough. Seriously, who are you? And then Choso finally reveals it, and he's like, I'm the oldest of the 10 siblings. And then in the last panel, he says, flowing red scale stack. And then we see the arrows form in his face. So this means like, he's basically using blood manipulation to like buff all of his physical stats. If you're familiar with Dragon Ball, this is like blood manipulation Kaioken. And this makes sense that he has to use this against Naoya instead of piercing blood because, you know, that requires the charge time and he's at a speed disadvantage here. But that's pretty much it for the chapter. So excited. Let me know what you think is gonna happen. Do you think in the next chapter we're gonna get Okkotsu versus Sukuna? Oh my God, please. Please, I hope that happens, but I wouldn't be mad if Fushiguro shows up. But just let me know what you think is gonna happen, and if you like the review, guys, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.